Okay, yeah, hello? We're back. I hope you're still there. Everything just crashed. I hope you're still there. I was reading from Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, and I don't know where things cut out, but I'll just read a little bit more, okay? For one thing, I mean, it's the least we can do on this day. And what's so troubling is as you read his words, they could still, in many ways, apply today as well. And that's the tough stuff. When last I thought I was on, he was talking about his disappointment in the white moderate. He said he'd rather deal with the Ku Klux Klan because you just can't. The white moderate is well. I'm afraid to repeat it. Are we okay? We are back up. Okay. Well, I don't know if our audience is there anymore. We'll see. I just had to re-embed everything. Let me just give you a little bit more, okay? Although this is an extraordinarily long letter, but of course he had time. He was sitting in the godforsaken Birmingham jail. He talks about traveling throughout the South and seeing these beautiful churches and wondering what kind of religion is being taught there. What kind of people go there? He says he's disappointed in the church. He says, I have traveled the length and breadth, here it is, of Alabama, Mississippi, and all the other southern states on sweltering summer days and crisp autumn mornings. I have looked at the South's beautiful churches with their lofty spires pointing heavenward. I have beheld the impressive outlines of her massive religious education buildings. Over and over, I have found myself asking, what kind of people worship here? Who is their God? Where were their voices when the lips of Governor Barnett dripped with words of interposition and nullification? Where were they when Governor Wallace gave a clarion call for hatred? Where were their voices of support when bruised and weary Negroes decided to rise from the dark dungeons of complacency to the bright hills of creative protest? I have wept over the laxity of the church. There can be no deep disappointment, however, where there is not deep love. I love the church. How could I do otherwise? I am in the rather unique position of being the son, the grandson, and the great-grandson of preachers. Yes, I see the church as the body of Christ, but oh, how we have blemished and scarred that body. He goes on to tell these other ministers, I wish you had commended the Negroes who were sitting in at lunch counters and the demonstrators of Birmingham for their sublime courage, their willingness to suffer, and their amazing discipline in the midst of great provocation. One day the South will recognize its real heroes, and they will be the James Merediths. with the noble sense of purpose that enables them to face jeering, hostile mobs, and with the agonizing loneliness that characterizes the life of the pioneer. They will be old, oppressed, battered Negro women, symbolized in a 72-year-old woman in Montgomery, Alabama, who rose up with a sense of dignity and with her people decided not to ride segregated buses, and who responded with ungrammatical profundity to one who inquired about her weariness. My feet is tired, but my soul is at rest. Who will the South's heroes be? They will be the young high school and college students, the young ministers of the gospel, and a host of their elders courageously and nonviolently sitting in at lunch counters and willingly going to jail for conscience's sake. One day the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at a lunch counter, they were in reality standing up for what is best in the American dream and for the most sacred values in our Judeo-Christian heritage, thereby bringing our nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers. Never before have I written so long a letter. I'm afraid it is too long to take your precious time. I can assure you that it would have been much shorter if I had been writing from a comfortable desk, but what else can one do when he is alone in a narrow jail cell, other than write long letters, think long thoughts, and pray long prayers? If I have said anything in this letter that overstates the truth and indicates an unreasonable impatience, I beg you to forgive me. If I have said anything that understates the truth and indicates my having a patience that allows me to settle for anything less than brotherhood, I beg God to forgive me. I hope this letter finds you strong in the faith. I also hope that circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each of you, not as an integrationist or a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and a Christian brother. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities, and in some not too distant narrow tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation. A letter from the Birmingham jail by Dr. Martin Luther King, April 16th, 1963. And evidence points to the fact that our country is as divided racially as it has ever been. I hope, is anybody there? Well, God bless you. And apologies.
Rising.
Huh?
And rising.
Okay. All right. Sorry. You know, there's something about the heartfelt cry of Dr. King to his fellow clergy, and something that occurred this weekend in Manila. I mean, it just sort of, it makes me think sometimes how religion, often, I'm afraid, that religion is unmasked. I think Dr. King unmasked in that letter the hypocrisy of the so-called leaders of the church. They were not on the right side. They were not on the side that Jesus would have been on. They were wrong. They were fearful, They were enjoying the status quo. And they put the power of their churches behind the enemies of Dr. King. Religion, I think, often gets unmasked for its hypocrisy. But what's fascinating to me is there never seems to be any shaking of the faith of those who subscribe to the church. And something that happened to the Pope in Manila made me, I think it's a stunning thing that happened, and perhaps you have seen this picture. But in one of the smaller assemblies that the Pope had while he was over in the Philippines, he was speaking to a crowd of about 30,000 people. Tiny compared to the 6 million who apparently showed up for this Mass. And this was an event at a Catholic university. And on the stage with him were two previously homeless children who had been rescued and given shelter by church charity. And this little girl, 12-year-old girl, unbelievable, a 12-year-old girl, her name was Glazelle Palomar. She had been homeless, and she had the courage to say to this Pope, to ask him a question. And this is, you know how children accept what we tell them. They accept religion without questioning, but they're troubled if they're thinking and observing. And a child who has seen what this formerly homeless child saw, she's got some questions. And she asked the Pope. And as she started to ask her questions, she began sobbing because she was tortured by this question. She asked him, many children are abandoned by their parents. Many children get involved in prostitution and in drugs. Why does God allow these things to happen to us? The children are not guilty of anything. In her mind, she has seen the horror of what life can be for an innocent and unprotected child. And she couldn't parse that with what the priests and the nuns are telling her about God's love. She's not alone there. I can't either. But there was the Pope. And she asked him why. And she was crying uncontrollably after she asked. The Pope grabbed her and hugged her. But he never answered her. You know why? 'Cause he couldn't. He was moved so much that he threw away the text he was going to give. There had been a prepared speech which he was going to give, I guess, in English, And instead, because he was so moved and so tongue-tied by the question from the girl, that he stood up and just began talking in his native tongue, in Spanish, extemporaneously. And he said this: "She is the only one who has put a question for which there is no answer." He admitted it. I got no answer. This wonderful, loving God of ours. I mean, people come up with twisted responses to why God would let innocent children suffer. But a lot of folks don't buy these tortured responses. The Pope, at least, didn't make a tortured response. He said, "I've got no answer." He said, "The nucleus of your question almost doesn't have a reply." So more than once he said, "I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer." But he did say, he told people that they should look at that child, look at her question, and understand that what that required of them was genuine charity, to obviously alleviate the suffering he can't explain. And he said there are certain realities in life that we only see through eyes that are cleansed with our tears. He was flummoxed. He was flummoxed. And then, because it had been a little girl, he went on to say that her question also showed that women were not adequately represented, nor or didn't have power in society. And the Pope said this, and this is, again, feels tortured to me: "Women have much to tell us. Sometimes we are too machista, and we don't allow room for the woman." A slight understatement from the Pope there. Women are capable of seeing things with a different angle from us, the guys. Women are able to pose questions that we men cannot understand. We have a call. Caller, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I've lost you on the internet for a while, so it might be my computer and not you. But you were reading the letter from...
Yeah, we went out. No, that was a crash on our side.
Okay.
Okay?
You were talking about the letter from Birmingham jail.
Yes.
And one of the points they made was that Martin Luther King was an outsider.
Yes, that he was an outside agitator. Right.
I just have this weird question. If it wasn't Martin Luther King but Jesus Christ, would they have said the same thing?
Yeah, probably. And that is what that's what he was viewed as, right? An outside agitator. Exactly.
Okay.
By the religious authorities of the time, yes.
Okay.
And the
Mind if I change subjects a bit?
No.
Did you read the latest quote from Mitt Romney?
What, do I look like a masochist?
He was speaking on the USS Midway to a group of Republicans.
Uh-huh.
And he said, addressing a gathering of Republican National Committee officials below the deck of the USS Midway. This is what he said about making the world safer with a more muscular foreign policy, providing opportunity for all Americans, and lifting people out of poverty. It is a tragedy, a human tragedy, that the middle class in this country, by and large, doesn't believe that the future will be better than the past, he said. We haven't seen rising incomes over decades. The rich have gotten richer. Income inequality has
he should
gotten
know.
worse.
Yeah.
And there are more people in poverty than ever before under this president.
You know what? Wait a minute. I did read that, and I laughed. Because this is Romney grabbing a Democratic talking point, right? And all of a sudden acting like all he cares about is income inequality and the fact that most people aren't getting an equitable slice of the pie. And coming from Mitt Romney's mouth or any Republican's mouth, it is amazing they don't choke on their words.
Well, have they ever thought that one of the reasons why we have income inequality is because they won't raise the minimum wage?
Well, it's because of their policies. The minimum wage, the tax structure, everything. The fact that they've absolutely gutted any kind of program that allows people to perhaps get a foothold and climb up. They have created a society in which the American dream is just that. It's a dream.
There's a book, Who Stole the American Dream by Henrik Smith. It should be required reading for all Americans.
Okay. I thank you.
All right?
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, that said, with that was the first time I sort of criticized the Pope. I'm not criticizing him. I mean, I appreciate that he didn't give him some bullshit answer to her. You know, one of the things that people who are skeptical of a God who is involved in our lives and who gives a shit about anything that happens to you, me, or the other, one of the things we've got going for us is reality. If you were an all-powerful being, if you were God, would you allow, in the world you created, would you allow this kind of suffering, of innocence? Oh, I know, he gave us free will, and he is not happy with our exercise thereof. Listen, you can concoct any goddamn story you want. But if I were a God, I would protect the children. And that's why ministers and rabbis and priests have such trouble comforting people who ask very reasonable questions, like this little girl. And if you're a person of faith, you believe whatever they say. Oh, they're in if it helps you. When someone dies, they're in a better place. To me, they're 6 feet under and they've ceased to exist. But you can think they're in a better place. But I don't know how you do that. I really don't know how. All right, whatever. Okay, good thing about the Pope is speaking at the presidential palace in the Philippines, he ripped into the rich. Ripped into the rich. And I guess that would probably constitute everybody that was there at the palace. He ripped into the scandalous inequalities in the Philippines. He ripped into the corruption of the politicians. And, that takes some, you're the Pope, you just greeted the Prime Minister, the President, and all these fancy schmancy people of privilege, and then you get up and you say, you're a bunch of corrupt jerks. I like that. It's like what he did to the courier. Jumped all over him. Another thing I liked about this Pope, did you see all the pictures of him? It was pouring the whole time in there. And everyone was given these yellow rain ponchos. And he wore a yellow rain poncho throughout the Mass and as he gave all his speeches. When I don't know another Pope who would have done that. They would have had, cardinals holding big umbrellas over them, right? They would have. Oh, yeah. Here, something else. Oh, look. Oh, wait. Before we get off the rich. Guess what? This just came in. The rich have, in the last year, gotten richer. Everybody else, there's just this one pie. And if the rich keep taking more and more of it, guess what's left for everybody else? Nothing much. You could, and this is what they figured, take, this is unbelievable, 80 people, okay? There are 80 people in this world that hold as much wealth as half of the rest of the world. So, the 50% that constitute the poorest in the world, the lowest 50%, they share the same amount of money that 80 people have amongst themselves. Now, if you were to do a pie chart of that, you couldn't even show what those 80, there's not a line thin enough to show what a small percentage of the world's population that is. 80 people together own 2 trillion, which is what billions and billions of other people in this world have to split amongst themselves. Also says here, the richest 1% of the population, and that's more than 80. The richest 1%, another little sliver, and those are millions of people, control almost half of the world's total wealth. Now, if you had a pie and you cut it in half and you gave one half to one, there's 100 people, to one person. You gave half to one person and you told the other 99, here, this is for you. That's what we got. That's the reality. And that's what global capitalism has done. Ah, yes. Fine system. It's fine for creating wealth, but it does crap at distributing it in any reasonable manner. Yeah, wealth creation, fantastic. Capitalism, that's your guy. But there's only a few people getting it. The people who labor for the 1%, they don't get a fair share. Ugh. All righty. Oh, and this for the factually challenged, but what difference does it make? I think Krugman in the New York Times today had a column about how don't even bother anymore with facts, trying to argue with these people. They simply will not. They live in a total faith-based reality. So apparently now there is pretty much irrefutable proof that the globe is like heating up at a frightening rate. Mm-hmm. But don't tell that to the Republicans. Oh, no. Extreme heat. 2014, the year we just saw, and I say good riddance to it. The year 2013 broke more heat records and is clearly the hottest year since humans have kept records. And there's this marvelous graph in the Times about average global temperatures since 1880. And it is just, first of all, until the Industrial Revolution, it's really down there. And then on and onward and upward. Do you know the only place in the United States that didn't see record heat was the Northeast? We're living in the only part of the country, and it's because of something about the jet streams and the way things have gone. It could be the global warming for Pittsburgh and for points east is going to mean actually a more moderate climate. Everybody else is going to get scorched. Extreme heat blanketed Alaska, most of the western U.S. Records were set everywhere in every inhabited continent. And the ocean, warmer than it's ever been, and the fish, I think we mentioned last year, dying out left and right. All right, scientists now expect the heat to get much worse over coming decades, but already it is clearly killing forests around the world. I guess, though, the heat's killing whatever forests we're not cutting down. It is driving plants and animals to extinction. It is melting ice and causing the seas to rise at an accelerating pace. Here is a climate scientist at Penn State. He says, quote, "It is exceptionally unlikely that we would be witnessing a record year of warmth during a record warm decade during a several decades-long period of warmth that appears to be unrivaled for more than 1,000 years were it not for the rising levels of planet-warming gases produced by the burning of fossil fuels." In other words, the culprit? Me. You. All of us. You've heard the term clear and present danger? Well, there's a definition. Clear and present danger that will destroy the global economy, will create social upheaval, and if you live another just 10, 15 years, you will be able to witness that kind of history. And if you have children and grandchildren, you can say a prayer to that God that doesn't give a damn. Marion has written us a little note called My Year in Huntsville, Alabama. We lived in Huntsville in the early 80s, moving there from California for my husband's job. 1 year, and I had never experienced racism before. Naive, well, you could have moved here. I found more racism in Pittsburgh than I have anywhere else that I have lived. But granted, I never lived in the South, but I have never experienced racism like I see it here. I did meet a lot of nice white people there, but was informed that southern Alabama, i.e. Montgomery, did not consider Huntsville a part of the South because there were too many Yankees there. My husband's company had a plant there, and the Space Center was there, so there were a lot of Yankees. I heard a lot more examples of the divisions of races in that 1 year we lived there. The black workers that worked for the county knew not to go to work on the roads in a certain town south of Huntsville called Arab. One of my daughters was in kindergarten. They had no recess at all. This was so white kids did not have the opportunity of making friends with the black kids. We had to carpool our children to school. There were no buses. I assume that was for the same reason. I could go on, but needless to say, I was glad to leave. On a funny note, my one older daughter's best friend was named Melanie Imalji, and all the children say yes, sir, and yes. Oh, I see. It's like the emojis. And all the children say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. I told my older daughters that I couldn't wait till they picked up those terms. They didn't think that was funny. Anyway, we didn't live there long enough for them to pick that up. Yeah, but I do want to say it's easy for us Yankees to look down our noses at the South. But I think a black person would tell you, it's sort of like what Dr. King was saying in that letter from the Birmingham jail, that he'd almost rather deal with the KKK than a moderate white person. Because he knew where the KKK stood. But a moderate white person was somebody who, might smile at him and then stab him in the back when he turned. And I find that in the North, as I said, I have never seen the overt racism that I have seen here in my 30 plus years here. Nor the segregation, nor the fear of black people by white people. I've never seen anything like it. And I've lived in places, other places. So I sort of always get on my high horse about people from the North thinking that they somehow have clean hands. I can assure you, we don't. All you have to do is listen to black people. This city, one of the most segregated, one of the worst places to be an African American. This city. Another city, Cleveland. Another city, Milwaukee. Last time I looked, none of those cities were in the South. They all fought for the Union. So, just saying. Oh my God! Oh, it's noon?
No.
Okay. It's not noon. It's 11. We never changed the...
No.
We never, with daylight savings, whatever the hell that is. We didn't bother. Okay, well, sorry about that little glitch. We're trying, man. We're trying. We dated something. Okay, and I promise not to talk about that anymore, so I'm doing pretty well.
That one wasn't our fault, to be fair.
It wasn't our fault? What
No,
happened?
I mean, the computer just
Crashed.
dead. It was just...
So it was actually that one computer?
It was actually the hardware. That I can't.
Okay.
I can't control.
Okay, so yeah, it was just a...
Sorry.
Okay. Take some time today, if you would, to look up some of Dr. King's speeches and get the real deal instead of the whitewashed Dr. King that the country, the mythologized Dr. King that the country would have you. Or go see Selma, for God's sakes. That'd help too, I suppose. Okay? Talk at you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.